guys, Dad Dash here with a profit review, and we're going to be doing a order review here today, a profit review, where I'm going to take you through each order that I accepted on this shift that I did today, and I'm going to break down the profitability of each order so you can kind of see what the initial, and I'm going to take it through like this. I'm going to show you the initial offer screen, and then I'm going to show you the profitability of the order, so you can kind of see if it matches up with what you think would be a profitable order. And I think you're going to be surprised with some of the orders. And then I'm going to show you the overall profitability of the shift and exactly how much we made. So guys, hopefully before we get started here, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe to the channel. If you're liking what you're seeing on the channel, if you've been watching for a while, subscribe to the channel. If you get value out of this video today, please share it with anybody else that you think might gain value from this. And also, of course, if you're enjoying the content, hit like, just to let YouTube know that you like the content. Let me know that you're liking what I'm doing, and I'll produce more of this content. So without further ado, let's jump in here and look at this first order. So the first order today that I did end up accepting was this $10.50 DoorDash order. Now you're going to see here, interestingly enough, this is an order that a lot of people would turn down. However, I saw value in the order and believed it would represent a pretty strong value statement, and we're going to get into why that is. So let's jump in to the profitability breakdown of the order. It did end up having a little bit of extra tip, as you see there, of 25 cents. We ended up with a $10.75 payout. We ended up working 24 minutes on the order and driving 13 miles. Now, where does this end up putting our profitability of the order? Well, it ended up with a $1.05 gas cost for myself, a 50-cent maintenance cost, because we set aside 50 cents for each order that we do, and we ended up with a total tax deduction of $7.61 due to the mileage deduction. So it ended up with a mileage withholding or tax withholding expense of 79 cents for a total order expense of $2.34. This left a profit of $8.41 after expenses, for a total profit per minute of 35 cents on the order, and taking that order profit for the hour of $21.03 of profit per hour, and an expense ratio, very strong expense ratio, under 25%, of 21.74%. So this ended up being a very profitable order, and anytime you're making $20 or more of profit, now that's not gross revenue per hour, that is profit in your pocket per hour. That's where this order ended up. So this ended up being a very, very strong order, and as you can see there, it on that order screen that you saw was an order most of you would have probably turned down, but this is a profitable order that ended up making me money, and you'll see exactly how an order like this factors in when we get to the end of the day. So next order we did accept was a $7 DoorDash order from Glory Days Grill for 5.1 miles. It was 2 items big, and we end up with a little bit of extra hidden tip of 20 cents. So where does this order break down at? Let's take a look at it. Now this was 5 miles. It ended up being a little higher. I was thinking there could have been a little extra tip there. This did not end up being one of my most profitable orders, but it did not end up being bad either. It was just too low of an order without anything boosting in or adding any extra money on the hidden side. We ended up working 25 minutes. That was the downside, because we got caught up with a little bit of a wait at the restaurant, and then we ended up with 10 miles driven. Now that ended up generating a gas cost of this order of 81 cents. We had a 50-cent maintenance cost, for a total tax deduction of $5.85, leaving only a 34-cent tax withholding, for a total order expense of $1.65. This left a profit after expenses of $5.55, or a 22 cents per minute worked, profit per minute worked, or a $13.33 order profit value per hour, which again, this is turned into a very weak order due to the minutes worked. However, the expense ratio was in line, so the issue with this order really came down to the amount of time it took to complete the order. So we had a 22.85% expense ratio that came in line. So the initial read on this order, if this had been, say, a 10-minute order or 15-minute order, we would have been in much better position to have capitalized and made this a $20+ an hour profit, of a profit value. However, the order minutes worked got us. So moving on to the next order, we got this very nice order from UberEats of $14.50, going 3.8 miles for Glory Days Grill. That was the same place we just went to. Now this one, you're going to see, ends up in a very different situation because of the size of the order, which I have stressed over and over again that order size makes a tremendous difference. So let's look at the overall profitability of this order. We worked the same amount of time as the previous order, 25 minutes. We only drove 7 miles, and our gas costs ended up being 57 cents. Our maintenance costs ended up being 50 cents, and we ended up with a $4.10 tax deduction. Our total tax withholding ended up being $2.60 for a total order expense of $3.67. Now, the profit after expenses on this order ended up being $10.83. However, the profit per minute worked was 43 cents, and we ended up with an order profit per hour of about $26. So that is a very, very strong order. However, the expense ratio on this particular order ended up being 25.29%. So it's a little on the high end, but that was mainly because the miles that were driven were lower. So this is where you can see kind of the conflict there. When you drive the lower miles, you end up paying more in taxes. So obviously there's a case to be made that says, hey, you're, not putting the wear and tear on your vehicle. However, you are taking more money out of your pocket, potentially, because you're going to be paying more in taxes for the less miles that are being driven. But in this case, we ended up with a very strong order profit value. Nonetheless, even with a high expense ratio, again, that is the magic of focusing on order size and making sure your order size is in line. So our next order that we did was an $8 order for 4 items from DoorDash for 6.9 miles. So I accepted this, believing that there would be extra money in the order, and I was correct, as this ended up cashing out at $11. And you can see here that this ended up being another strong order as far as profitability wise. We ended up with 20 minutes worked. We ended up with 11 miles driven. So our order gas cost ended up being 89 cents. We ended up with a 50-cent maintenance cost, a total tax deduction of $6.44 for a tax withholding of $1.14. Total order expense to complete the order was $2.53, with a profit after expenses of $8.47, or a 42-cent per minute worked. Or which comes out to a order profit value per hour of $25.41 in our pocket per hour. So that ended up with being a very, very strong order, and our expense ratio came in right where we wanted it to be, under 25%. So this order ended up being a very, very strong order for us, and ended up being a huge profit generator here for us. So again, this is a type of order that you would look at and go, okay, it's $11. It ends up being 11 actual miles driven. I think it was actually showing 8 miles by DoorDash, but there was a few extra miles driven in there when we were trying to locate and get this order. So you can see here that, again, it's creating a picture where the miles end up putting, it's a push-pull of, if you've got a car that can handle and is an efficient vehicle, then you can absorb some of that mileage cost and maintenance cost, and the miles driven actually can end up putting more money back in your pocket. So let's just continue watching this as we go through the shift. So the next order that we get is an Applebee's order, going $10 for $10.28, going 4.6 miles. So we accepted that order, and we got paid out $10.28. We ended up working 22 minutes on the order. We drove 8 actual miles, so you can see there's a few extra miles there because of miles that were driven prior to the order being accepted. We ended up with a gas cost, an actual gas cost on the order of 65 cents, a 50-cent maintenance cost, $4.68, which this order resulted in a $4.68 tax deduction, which resulted in a tax withholding of only $1.40, bringing our total order expense to $2.55. Now, this resulted in a $7.73 profit after expenses, which is very, very strong. And we ended up with a profit per minute worked of 35 cents. Now, the order profit here ended up being $21.09 that we cleared after. Again, you can see all of these orders coming in tonight well over the $20 mark, landing an expense ratio of 24.77%. So this came in just under the 25% that we want to be at. So it still came in line, even though obviously the miles were a little bit high on this order. The time worked ended up coming in our favor. It was just a hair over probably what we would have really liked to have seen, but nonetheless, it was still a very, very solid order. So moving on to the next order that we took, this actually turned into a stacked order, so I'm only able to show you. I did not get screenshots of both, but you'll see on the next screen the payout. This is the first half of that order of 1358, going 8.1 miles. So this is what we ended up with. We ended up getting an add-on to the order of I think it was about $7.97 on top of the 1358, and we ended up. Now this order, as you're going to see, it's interesting. This is a high value order, okay? But you're going to see the interesting part about this order is due to the miles driven and the minutes worked, the value of this order was a little bit less. So it's like we took a big order, but this ended up not being quite the value that I thought it would be, or probably that most would look at when you're looking at a $21 order. So let's see how this shapes out. We ended up working this order for 51 minutes. Do keep in mind it was 2 orders, and we drove 17 miles for the order. That created a gas cost of $1.37, a total maintenance cost of 50 cents. We only had a tax deduction of $9.95. So this did create a tax withholding of $2.90 for a total expense for the order of $4.77. Now we did take in $16.78 profit after expenses, but it only resulted in a profit per minute of 33 cents and an order profit value of under $20. It is the second order of the evening that ended up under $20. This one ended up at $19.74, so it's not absolutely terrible, but our expense ratio did end up under 25% at 22.16. And again, as you can see there, the larger the order is, the better it is on the expense side, and our expense ratio ended up being significantly lower. So this was a stacked order, but like I said, the big payout does help there. So moving on to the next order that we had, we then accepted this Taco Bell order, and you can see now this is another interesting order because it's 11.8 miles, $10.53. Many of you may say, why would you take this? Well, there's a few different reasons, but one of them being is because it was a profitable order, and you're going to see how it turns out, or was it? So my thought was it was a profitable order. However, you're going to see the main issue with this order ended up being the order, the time it took to complete the order. You can see the expense ratio was in line, and this very well could have been a very good order had we ended up being able to complete this in under 20 minutes. But let's go into what exactly happened with this order. So we ended up with a $10.53 order. We ended up working 37 minutes. We drove 12 miles. We had an order gas cost of 97 cents, a maintenance cost of 50 cents, and a total tax deduction of $7.02. This created an 88-cent tax withholding, and we ended up with a total order expense of $2.35. So not bad there on that, because we kept our expense ratio at 22.29%. So our profit after expenses for this order was not bad at all. It was $8.18. However, where things went off the rails is in the profit per minute category, which ended up driving down our order profit value. We ended up with only a 22-cent per minute, a profit per minute worked, which again resulted in that $13.27 per hour profit. So the issue we had here was it ended up being the minutes worked, and this was due to an excessive wait time at the restaurant. So again, you know, one of the things that you've got to be conscious of is the size of the order in relationship to the time you're going to work. In this case, had we gotten the order done in the appropriate amount of time, it would have been a profitable order. But in this case, it turned out not to be. But my essential gut feeling at the beginning of this order, when we accepted it, I think was sound. But this is just one of those things where sometimes you have an excessive amount of wait time and you have things going on at a restaurant. Now, this is also where you should be keeping track of this, and I did not do that. I was not necessarily keeping track of the order value, but this is one of the ways you can take a look at it and start to say, okay, the longer you're on this order, the farther that profit value is dropping, and therefore, is it worth your time, or should you try to search out and find a bigger order or better order? You got to assess where you think your market's at that time, what time of day it is. Do you think you could find a more profitable order? In my opinion, at this time, I don't think I would have necessarily been able to find an order that would have made up for the time I already had invested. But that was a calculation I made, and we'll see how it, the overall day ended up and see how bad this order affected us. So let's move on to the next order. So the next order following this order was a $13.36 Uber order going 3 miles for Wendy's. Wendy's is known for its wait times. However, this Wendy's tends to be more efficient, although once you get into the late nights, as you notice, this is at 9:30 at night, you are going to end up with a wait, namely because they close the dining room and you can only get your orders in the drive-thru. So let's see, how did this develop? So we ended up with a $13.36 payout. We ended up with 26 minutes worked. Now, we ended up with 6 miles driven, and we ended up with a 48-cent gas cost, a 50-cent maintenance cost, for a total tax deduction of $3.51, and a tax withholding of only $2.46. Or not only a tax deduction, pretty large tax deduction of $2.46. And that was namely due to the mileage being so low. Now, this resulted in an order expense of $3.45, again, putting us over that 25% expense ratio goal, coming in at 25.80%. So this is important because our profit after expenses ended up being $9.91. Now, how did that affect our profit per minute worked? Well, because we were able to keep the minutes worked at 26 minutes, well under 30 minutes. Now, we would have liked to have taken an order like this and kept it under 20, but we ended up at 26, which still ended up in an order profit value per hour of $22.88. So it's still well north of $20. Now, on this order, this ended up being a slight disaster. So we could have had it well under 20 minutes. We could have probably had it somewhere around 18 minutes. And this would have been a game-changing situation because this was actually part of a created stack that I did. And it was an ill-fated stack because what ended up happening is I ended up, for the first time in my career, and unfortunately I wasn't doing a ride-along to capture this error, but I ended up delivering this order to the wrong person. So I actually delivered a Taco Bell order that I had stacked with this to this customer. I was on my way to the second drop-off, which I believed was going to be the Wendy's, and this customer called me and I had to return to their house. So the order minutes worked would have been probably 6 to 8 minutes less, because I had to return back to the house, swap out the orders, and then head back on my way to to drop off the Taco Bell order to its correct owner. So let's move on and take a look at the Taco Bell order here and see how all of this affected it. Because unfortunately, it did end up resulting in this order time being a little bit longer. So you can see here that, this ended up being, this was an order that snuck in there. We did not end up doing this order, by the way. This was a turn down and a rejection. So the order that was supposed to be showing up there was a Taco Bell order for GrubHub. I don't know if that's going to show up, and there it is, $12.91. So I apologize, it ended up getting out of order. Somehow a declined order snuck in there. But this is the order for Taco Bell that we ended up showing up with. 2.5 miles, $12.91. So very solid order on the front end. Now, this order you're going to see ended up being an absolutely outstanding valued order. Even though we had a snafu, but those minutes ended up piled on that other order. But this order ended up being $12.91, 16 minutes worked, 6 miles driven. Now let's look at the expense ratio though on this. This is where it gets interesting. We ended up with a 48-cent gas cost. We ended up with a 50-cent maintenance cost. And only a $3.51 tax deduction. This resulted in a tax withholding of $2.35 and a total order expense of $3.33. This left a profit after expenses of $9.58. Now, the interesting part about this is that the expense ratio on this order ended up being over 25%. So it's $25 or 25.83%. However, because of the order size, even though our expense ratio came in much higher than what we intended, and the amount of time we were able to get this order completed, that we ended up with a profit per minute worked of a high for that day for today. This is our best profit per minute worked order of the day of 60 cents per minute. That is outstanding. This ended up with a order profit value. This is not gross revenue. This is an order profit value in our pocket of $35.91. Absolutely an outstanding order. Definitely ended up being the order of the day. Now, yes, this was helped out because of the way the numbers were represented here, because we did end up with some of the time shoveled onto the Wendy's order. So this ended up picking up when that one got done. But overall, this ended up representing a great value for the day. Now, we'll jump through to the next order here, which ended up being another Wendy's order. And I apologize, it got out of order here. But we'll jump back. This was our final order of the day. It was $15.55 for 8.7 miles. Now, let's take a look and see how this ended up shaking out for us here. So we ended up with 24 minutes worked, so very strong minutes worked for that size of an order. We ended up driving 11 miles. We ended up with a gas cost of 89 cents, a maintenance cost of 50 cents, and a tax deduction of only $6.44, meaning we had a tax withholding of about $2.28. Now, this resulted in a total order expense of $3.67. Now here, because of the size of the order, because we sized it right, our expense ratio, even with the lower tax deduction, okay, due to the miles being low in comparison to the amount of the order, we ended up with a 23.59% expense ratio. Our profit after expenses ended up being $11.88 in our pocket. This resulted in a 50-cent profit per minute worked, which came out to an order profit value of $29.71, our second best of the day. So this really ended up being an outstanding value and representing an outstanding value to us. So we ended the day with a very strong order. Now, looking at the shift as a whole, we ended up making and generating a total gross revenue of $127.63. We ended up working a total of labor minutes, meaning minutes we worked, of 265 minutes. We ended up driving 101 miles. So this resulted in total expenses for the entire time we worked. $8.16 total gas cost, a $5 shift, a $5 maintenance cost for today. This resulted in a total tax deduction of $59.09 with a total tax withholding of $17.14. And so our total shift expense to operate this shift ended up being $30.30. And this ended up with a profit after expense of nearly $100, just under $100, $97.33. So an excellent profit after expenses. This resulted in a profit per minute of 37 cents a minute worked. So 37 cents a minute worked, meaning we generated an hourly profit of $22.04. So that's over $20 an hour profit. That is not gross generated revenue. That is money in our pocket after we pay our expenses, after we pay our gas, maintenance costs, and taxes. We ended up with $22.04 and a expense ratio of 23.74%. So well under the 25% mark that we want, which resulted in an outstanding profit after expenses and an outstanding hourly profit value. So guys, it was a very, very good shift. We ended up making very strong profits. So it ended up being very profitable, and that was even driving 101 miles. Now, obviously, one of the things driving that low per mile gas cost that I'm enjoying right now is because I drive a Prius. So again, one of the things you want to focus on in my maintenance cost, you may say, well, wait a minute, that's pretty low compared to that's too low for me. Well, one of the nice parts about a Prius is it's very efficient. The maintenance costs are very low. So the 50 cents is a comfortable spot that I can put per order. And then of course we have the 50, even though it says 59 cents, it's rounding up, but it's 58.5 cents per mile tax deduction. So it allows me to take more advantage of that tax deduction and therefore put more profits in my pocket on a daily basis. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Give me your thoughts in the comments there. What are your thoughts on the shifts in the order or of the shift there and of the orders I took? What is your thoughts on what should be set aside on a per order basis, or should it be maybe a per mile basis? Give me your thoughts. What do you think? And also, guys, how are you doing it? How do you keep track of things, and how do you determine the profitability of your orders? So share all of that. And most importantly, guys, if you're enjoying this video, if you enjoyed this video and enjoy what I shared today, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share this video with anybody that you think might be able to gain something from this, especially if they're new to the gig economy and they're a new gig business operator. All right, guys, I appreciate you watching today, and I will be talking to you soon.